Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cyberside Chats. My name is Sherri Davidoff. I'm the founder of LMG Security.
I'm Matt Durrin. I'm the Director of Training for LMG Security.
And today we're going to talk about shadow AI. 65% of organizations have had a security incident involving an AI agent. And many of these agents are things that your IT department doesn't even know about. Your security team has no idea that that agent is even running. And today we're going to talk about some major breaches like Vercel and the Meta
Uh,
breach. We're also going to dig into what is shadow AI. It's a little different from shadow IT, perhaps more nuanced. And we'll talk about how you can rein it in. Raise your hand if you are losing sleep because of shadow AI agents. This is really just an opportunity to stretch and raise your hands because this is a nightmare scenario, I
uh,
think, for security.
yeah, there's some pretty significant implications when we talk about allowing an unsanctioned AI agent that someone in your organization either coded or implemented that you have no control over.
Yeah. So first of all, what is an AI agent? An AI agent is an AI tool that actually takes actions
Mhm.
on behalf of a user or potentially with a machine identity. So it can actually do things. It could maybe buy things online. It could write code. It can do things on your behalf, not just write an email for you, but engage in multi-step actions. And so, what is shadow AI?
So the shadow agents that we're talking about here are agents that people build with things like Copilot or with the Anthropic system or something like that. In a lot of cases, users who have access to those platforms have the ability to make those agents, especially when we look at Claude, like the dispatch system or something like that. And the problem that we run into is that these are not tracked or managed by IT. They're just kind of independent little AI bots running around on your network doing things that a user has asked them to without really looking at the implications behind them.
Yeah, they're sometimes not even visible. So I kind of divided it into these three different categories. One is the unsanctioned agent that someone just builds, as you said, in
Right.
Copilot Studio or in ChatGPT, and they've done it on the side and it's just existing and running with their permissions and privileges, but they're not a human and you didn't background check that agent. Thank you very much.
Yep.
And sometimes it does things that you didn't tell it to do, like with Meta, which we'll get to. Second is maybe it's sanctioned but invisible. Maybe you've told everybody it's okay to use Copilot. It's okay to use ChatGPT. You've given everybody the okay on a platform, but you're not tracking what each agent can access, who's using it, what it can do. And that opens up a real invisible surface.
Well, and I mean, the speed at which you can develop these little agents and just get them running on your network is pretty amazing when we think about the technology. But it's also really difficult because I mean, even if IT was starting to track these things, they pop up so frequently that it becomes impossible to track
Well,
very
there's
quickly.
all these new surfaces popping up. The third
Yeah.
one is an agent that your user has granted access to, like a third party agent.
Mm.
And again, we're going to dig into the Vercel case where a user granted access to their Google workspace to a third party agent, and poof, they ended up getting hacked, losing a lot of sensitive information.
Yeah.
So that's the third way that we see shadow AI agents in environments.
Yeah. Right.
So I was really excited when I called you the other day and said, "Oh my God, there's a Claude dispatch now that allows you to control Claude from your phone." And then I was like, wow, that is
Wait a minute.
really doing an end run around the firewall. So let's back up. In March of this year, Claude came out with a utility called Dispatch. And basically, users pair it with things like Claude Cowork from their phone. So, Cowork is agentic AI
Mhm.
and it runs on the user's desktop. It can take actions for them. Remember, Cowork can also be connected to Slack and GitHub and lots of other services. Um, and a lot of people have things running on their computers and want to step away or just want to work from elsewhere.
Sure.
And so they pair it with Claude on their phones, maybe their personal phones, and they can do this from anywhere they go. And anybody who happens to find their phone on a bus can potentially do the same thing.
Yeah. What did they say? This is like go to my PC except for
That
AI.
that's what
Yeah.
struck me. I was like, "This is like Go to My PC," and it has all the security issues of Go to My PC and then some.
Yeah.
So if you remember, Go to My PC got rolled out, gosh, I think it was at least a decade ago,
It's been around for a while. Yeah.
if not longer. And it allowed employees to do an end run around the firewall and get to their computers from home. And, in some cases, in some environments, that was sanctioned. That was like the way people got access to their files. But it created these huge security risks, of course, because guess what? If an adversary gets access to the user's home computer, they can also leapfrog into the environment. Didn't you have a ransomware case
Oh, multiple.
cause
Yeah.
Was it Go to My PC?
Go to My PC was one of them. Actually, no, I think I had a couple that were Go to My PC specifically, and it was the exact same thing. Like, it was right at the very beginning of like the COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of people were switching very rapidly to remote work, and Go to My PC for some people seemed like a perfect solution to that. Users can go home, they can use the computer they already have, they can access their work computer, and they can still get all their work done. But when we introduce things like unmanaged devices, we also introduce big security risks, like maybe not up to date antivirus, or
Yeah.
maybe it's already infected with something.
And that's
So
different from a VPN because
yeah,
it's not like people are connecting inbound. There is an outbound connection through a third party. So if number one, if the third party has a problem, you have
mhm.
a problem. And also, again, you don't have all of those security precautions that you can get from a VPN that is checking the device and maybe restricting access and putting them on a different segment or things like that.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong. When I first saw Dispatch had come out, I got really excited about that because cool, I
Right?
can control Claude from my phone now. But then I thought about it a little
It's
bit.
like,
I'm like,
no.
oh, that needs some vetting.
Ready for
Yeah,
that. I don't know if the world is ready for that. Don't get me wrong. The
yeah,
other thing is Anthropic has auto mode in their research preview, and there's ways to trigger AI agents so that cowork will run really without any human in the loop at all. So,
mhm,
boom, you trigger it from your phone, you come back 5 hours later, and like maybe it's like a Pocket OS situation. Oh, crap, it deleted our whole infrastructure.
yeah,
Who
could happen.
knows? It runs with the privileges of the user. So think really carefully about what privileges you are giving to users and consider the fact that AI is now capable of taking those privileges.
Yeah, especially if it's paired with like an MCP and can actually take action on the systems. That becomes really scary.
Role based access control has never been more important. Most
Agreed.
users are over provisioned and have more access than they need to. And now is the time to just start crossing the T's, dotting the I's on permissions.
Yeah.
What's
Should
next?
we talk about Vercel?
Yes, let's talk about the Vercel breach.
All right. So most of you have used Vercel systems probably without knowing it. They're one of the biggest hosting providers on the internet. They're also the company behind Next.js, the framework that runs like Nike and the Washington Post and other massive e-commerce sites.
Any modern website
Yeah.
built in React, a huge percentage of those are
Mhm.
actually hosted in Vercel's
Yep.
environment.
And Vercel suffered a data breach, but what was amazing about this was it wasn't really a vulnerability in their code, and the employee who ended up being ultimately responsible for allowing in a bad actor didn't really do anything wrong according to their policies.
So they announced in
Yeah,
April. So this
yeah, they
just
announced in
happened.
April.
They
Yeah,
announced in April 2026 that there was a breach. And what was actually leaked?
so
It was
it
customer
was customer information, it was private, private account information, financial records, things like that.
database
Yeah,
credentials,
database credentials.
API keys, things that could potentially affect the security of their customers were at risk.
Yeah, and all of it came through an employee who had allowed access to a startup AI company that was a productivity software suite called Context.ai. And they had an AI Office suite that you could load in, and it would integrate with Google Workspace, which is what they use. And it's just supposed to make your life easier. Think about like Copilot integration in Microsoft Word or something similar to that. Unbeknownst to them, though, when the employee authorized that, they clicked Allow All. So that means they now have a blanket OAuth token that application can use.
And that employee was a developer, is that right?
Yeah, I believe so. But what they didn't know and really couldn't have known at that point is someone's computer at Context AI was infected with the Luma Stealer malware. And Luma Stealer steals things like, spoiler, API credentials, OAuth tokens, things like that.
That's where the
Yeah,
developer came in.
that's
It
where the
was a
developer came in.
developer at context.ai,
Yeah,
this third-party tool. And so that developer's account had access to, guess what? Customer tokens,
right.
including Vercel's employees' tokens.
Yeah. And then our good old friends, the Shiny Hunters, were able to exploit the fact that they now had that OAuth grant. They were able to infect Google Workspace first and then pivot back into Vercel's main environment, siphon off a ton of data, and then throw it up for sale on the dark web for about $2 million.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Wow.
yeah, not a great situation to find yourself in. But again, this was an employee who thought they had done everything right. I mean, they were following the protocols that Vercel
Yeah.
used for authorizing these agents for integrating AI into your daily workflow, and just pure dominoes falling happenstance on the back end. They ended up getting breached because of it.
Well, and Vercel is committed to having what they call a formidable response.
Mhm.
You can tell that they're upset that this happened because they do take security
Yeah.
seriously, at least according to what they've written. They have a strong security culture. They do encrypt environment variables. They have multi-factor authentication. But one employee authorizing a brand new AI tool let in a huge backdoor to their entire
Yeah.
environment.
It's unfortunate. And again, I mean, looking over their security protocols and what they actually put in place to stop things like this from happening, I mean, they had a pretty solid security program.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
only takes 1 week, like but this number 1, this should make you think about, okay, what did this one employee have access to, and would there potentially be a way to rein that in?
sure. Yeah.
Because they gave the third-party tool access to their Google Workspace environment. And then, of course, you probably at this point wanna require admin, privileges or at least, admin approval when you authorize a third party tool to gain access to your environment,
Yeah.
especially with the allow all privileges. That's a very simple control that all of us could put in place like this week.
Mhm. Well, and we see it not just with, Google Workspace, we also see it with Microsoft 365, with AWS. I mean, this has been a consistent problem, over provisioning access, especially when we talk about API keys and tokens, that a lot of people just don't really have their heads around because they don't understand the implication behind it.
Yeah, and this is becoming more and more important in the age of AI because now we don't just have to worry about human identities getting over provisioned. We have machine identities and the identities that AI tools are using beyond the human scope that
Mhm.
we need to think about as well.
Wasn't it Varonis that said, like, machine identities outnumber humans, like, 50 to 1 inside most environments?
Something along those lines.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, right now, we are at a turning point when it comes to agentic AI. And it's so interesting that all on the same day, April 22nd, 2026, a day that will live in infamy, at
God.
least in cybersecurity, three different companies actually announced the launch of major AI agent platform expansions. So, do you want to share the first one?
Oh, completely, yeah. So, OpenAI, our friends, ChatGPT, they introduced ChatGPT's Workspace Agent, which is, again, an agentic solution that allows users to build apps that are powered by the OpenAI Codex model.
I'm so excited about this. It's gonna
Yeah.
let you like collaborate more
Mhm.
effectively, do more stuff. It integrates with Slack and 365 and lots of other platforms. And all of this is really
That's
scary.
also terrifying, yeah.
Hacking it and actually like reining in
Yeah.
permissions and privileges and things like that.
Yeah, yeah, we'll see how that one goes. And then, I mean, following suit, I mean, this is like the soda word or the
The
Cool
same
Wars all over
day.
again. Yeah, the same day, Google announced their Gemini Enterprise Agent platform, which is basically the same thing, except it runs through Google's AI system. It's the upgrade to their Vertex AI, and it is an incredibly powerful tool.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And then finally, we had Salesforce expanding Agentforce and integrating it with Gemini. So these three major tech platforms announcing expansions to agentic AI. And this is not the end.
no, no, not even close.
It's pretty close to the beginning. So all of these have started rolling out features to embed AI agents into the work your employees do every day. These are platforms that may already be improved in your environment, but have you really most organizations have not had an opportunity to really analyze these new features, and employees are already gonna be starting to talk about using them.
Yeah, yeah,
It's not just like flipping them on.
yeah.
Yeah, so IT may not have approved these, but they're available in platforms that you have approved.
Oh, and if it's just something like when we saw, like the workspace agents come out, I mean, that was more or less just an update to ChatGPT. So people who
Right.
were already using it just now had access to this feature. And again, it's a great feature. It seems really cool and really handy, but it also needs to be very tightly controlled.
Right. I think right now we need to start thinking about vendor vetting in even more granularity.
Yeah,
This actually reminds me a little bit about some of the issues that the Salesforce Drift breach brought up, a third party app that's integrated with Salesforce, because many organizations say, yep, we've approved Salesforce, good to go. And then their employees add third party apps, or in this case, like take advantage of agentic AI features. And that doesn't go through the same level of rigor when it comes to vetting.
right.
So now's the time to take that next step in maturing your third party risk management program. Don't think of Salesforce as one vendor or one platform, but hey, let's look at features for approval. Let's look at apps for approval. And we need to just start thinking at a more granular level.
Right. And I mean, if you look at something like Agentforce, I mean, there is a push to get this out to like every single one of Salesforce's customers. I mean, what did they say? They've closed 290,000 Agentforce deals this year.
Yes.
which is a massive increase. Like
That's
they're
huge.
delivering over 2 billion agentic work units. So that's quite a bit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Um, okay, well, let's talk a little bit about what happened at Meta. What's next? Because this is a different kind of shadow
This
agent
is, yeah.
problem.
With Meta, they were using an internal tool that Meta had produced, and so this wasn't, an off-the-shelf AI system, or it wasn't ChatGPT or something like that. This was Meta's AI, and it started acting kind of independently inside of their network. So, a developer had asked questions to it that had been asked by a different developer, and the AI ingested those and analyzed it like they should, but then started answering those questions as if it was the first developer.
It
Yeah.
posted it on the
Yep.
platform where the question was asked, and that's not something that the employee using the AI asked it to do. It said, "Hey, analyze this question for me." It wanted to understand the answers, and then the agentic AI actually posted a response without the user being
Yep.
aware of it. And a second employee read that response, followed the instructions,
Which was wrong.
which were wrong, expanded the overprivileged issue even more.
Yeah.
So more people had access to things that they shouldn't. And they therefore had, I guess, what I would call an internal breach.
Yeah, so they called it a severity one incident,
Very
in that none of the data actually left Meta, but people inside the organization had access to a bunch of stuff they weren't supposed to have access to for like 2 hours.
that is big
Yeah.
enough that they are a city.
Mhm.
They're a small town. I would be curious to know how many employees they have and compare that to the population of Missoula, Montana, where we're based. But yeah, if you said, "Oh, it was only available to everyone in Missoula, Montana," I would be like, "That's a problem."
Yeah, no, I mean, luckily their IR team did catch this, and they did
Yeah.
revert those changes, but it was still 2 hours worth of open time where that data was just purely exposed. So,
Yeah, and I think this really comes down to the issue of purpose limitations
mm,
on AI agents. Kiteworks did a really interesting study that found 63% of organizations cannot enforce purpose limitations on their AI agents. So, yeah, you're approved to use this AI agent, but we're not really effectively limiting what it can do. And that's why identity and controlling what different identities can do at that layer has become even more important right now.
my favorite stat is the second one you have on the list here.
Oh,
60% cannot terminate a misbehaving agent.
I'm
So,
sorry, I can't do that, Dave.
yeah, I'm sorry, Dave.
And 55% can't isolate AI systems from broader network access.
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna have to work on that.
Yeah, this is, don't freak out, everybody. We will get this under control. It might just take a while, and we need more AI agents to rein in the problem for us.
That seems like the obvious
That's
solution here.
definitely the solution. Okay, let's talk about how AI agents accumulate risk.
Yeah,
I kind of divide the problem into different layers in my mind. So let's go through it and then we can talk about how you can tackle it.
sure.
Um,
You gonna start with the endpoint?
absolutely.
Yeah, so endpoints are, I mean, this is where the kind of rubber hits the road when it comes to your employees using AI. It's using it on their own individual endpoints, and
Like
if
your
it's
personal phone that has
yeah,
dispatch on it. You don't
exactly.
even know that the employee had installed dispatch if you can't see their personal phone.
Yeah, right. So we have kind of this Wild West landscape where people have broad access to these tools, and there's very little governance in place for them.
The Wild West sounds too cool. I like to think of it more as like Mordor,
Ouch.
something. Okay.
All right.
Layer 2 is the identity layer, and I know we keep harping on that, but I think this is where you can quickly get some security gates. Think about things like service accounts. What do they have access to? API tokens, rein in those privileges so it's not everything.
Yeah.
OAuth grants, do not let your employees just allow third-party access to everything. You can require admin approval. You could do it today. Like after this webinar, go talk to your team and see how you can rein in the ability for users to just give anyone access to everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because a couple years ago we talked about those kind of grants in the context of like a consent
Davidoff.
fish,
Yeah,
something like that, and
it's not funny. Right.
it's not funny, but not funny, haha. But we did take steps. A lot of people did take steps to restrict that kind of behavior from happening. So you couldn't just click on a phishing email and grant someone full access into your Microsoft 365 tenant. But that didn't really get done with the AI agents. That was really just for phishing emails.
Yep,
So
exactly.
yeah,
Then there's the layer 3 discovery, the tool, and the
The
MCP gateway
MCP, yeah.
itself. I've actually spent like the past week writing my own MCP gateways, so I'm starting to learn a lot about this, and I'm putting it through the paces on security
Uh,
assessments. Not everybody is, because that's where you see things like prompt injection. You could have backdoors and malware. So don't forget the in between layer, the connectors that are
yeah.
helping to facilitate all of this.
Well, and the MCP gateway is realistically where we go from an AI agent like giving you advice on something and telling you what to do to just doing it for you.
I know, I'm so relieved and excited about it, but
I'm
so scared.
also terrified. Yeah.
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 Okay.
And then last one, the software as a service or the data layer
Oh,
that you have to work
application
with.
layer.
Yeah, where they read and write data. So what do they have access to? What kind of information could they potentially be including in things like responses or updates or something like that?
This is where the meta incident
Yeah.
lived. So it was grabbing things at the application layer and then saying, oh, yeah, I'll write back to that forum. And then another human, layer 8 in the OSI model, or the extended OSI model,
uh,
takes that information and does something even worse with it. So,
yeah.
yeah, at the application layer, we really have to be thinking about
And
that.
I mean, unintentional, but again, it just went ahead and acted kind of on its own, which is what we saw with like Pocket OS. I mean,
Yes.
the agent just did a thing that it thought it was supposed to do. It didn't do it maliciously, but it did cause problems.
If you're not familiar with the Pocket OS story, we did a podcast on it recently, Misbehaving AI.
Mhm.
So check it out. Podcast infrastructure podcast.
Pocket,
Pocket OS, their infrastructure was destroyed because of an AI that just took actions unilaterally,
even though it was told not to.
even though it was told not to explicitly. So check out our story on that from a
Yeah.
couple weeks ago.
Well, do we want to jump into takeaways?
Yeah, I think number one, start with discovery, not policy. You want to get visibility in your environment and you want to be asking your team and understanding what's actually running. I wouldn't ask people, do you use AI tools? Because it's too easy for people to say no
No.
or feel like it's not
Yeah.
okay. I would start asking the question, what AI tools are you using? And we need to be framing the rest of the conversation as how can I enable this safely?
Mhm.
Because if you don't enable it safely and quickly, then people are going to start using it behind your back, which creates even more risk.
Yeah, exactly. Next, and again, this I feel like a broken record saying this, but we need to audit and restrict things like OAuth grants. So OAuth tokens that are especially the allow all variation, which just gives full unfettered access to agentic AI or to an application or something like that, need to be really tightly controlled. And that's through Microsoft, through Google, through Amazon, through any other system that you're potentially using. Because remember, an OAuth token is as good, if not better, than having username, password, and MFA for an account. It gets you straight through the back door. It gives you access to everything the user has access to, and depending on how you're set up, that can be really damaging.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
a hall pass that gives you access to everything.
exactly.
Okay, treat AI agreements like vendor agreements because that's what they are. When an employee clicks allow all, like in the Vercel case,
Mhm.
when the employee clicked allow all on context.ai, they were agreeing to something. They were agreeing to that relationship with
Yeah,
context.ai. And that's not something that the organization as a whole knew that they were agreeing to. There was no BAA, there was no security agreement, there was no privacy agreement that the organization was aware of. So make sure that your team knows that and build some kind of lightweight intake process for AI tools so that when someone wants to use an AI tool, you're tracking on things like terms and conditions, you're tracking on what it has access to.
yeah.
And even if you're not sure how to rein it in, step one, get visibility.
Yeah, there you
All right,
go.
takeaway four.
All right, takeaway four, visibility at the identity layer. Understand what's accessing your network, how it's accessing. And again, this goes back to permissions, but like what it can do if it does have access. So service accounts, API access. We rely on machine identities to run most of our networks. That's not something we're going to get away from. That's something we just have to account for. And when we look at the sheer number of machine identities that exist in a normal enterprise network versus how many actual people are in the network, it outnumbers us drastically.
It
So
can't be
yeah,
better.
and so if we're not paying attention, then those can get out of control really
I think
quickly.
this is where IT teams can get really overwhelmed. And it's important to know that there are tools that can help you
Yes.
manage this. So, a few of them token security, Asterix, Andromeda, Entro. Look at Microsoft Agent 365. That was just launched this month, May 2026. And that gives you a registry and a map of agents inside your Microsoft ecosystem. So, boom, right there, take advantage of
Yeah.
that so that you start getting that visibility. Sorry, I keep going back to visibility, but it's true. That is
It's
the first step.
important. Yeah.
Okay, last thing, build a fast lane for AI tool approvals because if you don't, users again are going to start to do an end run around you.
Yeah.
So understand, don't use shadow AI. I think that's the wrong message right now.
I don't think a lot of regular users inside an environment really know even what that means.
Yeah.
But
Well, I mean, it's like if you put piles of chocolate next to children and then said, don't eat the chocolate, that's where we are with AI.
yeah.
We have to let them eat the chocolate, but maybe give them some guidelines so that, it's some healthy stuff too.
Yes.
But yeah, your employees will use it anyway, and you don't want them to hide it. So have a process where number one, you are aware of what tools people are using. If there are ways that they can be configured more securely, make sure that you take advantage of it. A good example of that is ChatGPT, where you can just turn off data training on some of the licensing models, and it doesn't cost you anything. Just turn off training on your data,
Yeah.
things like that. If your intake process takes even 2 or 3 weeks, you may find employees are already using these tools without you being aware of it. They're very good at finding ways to get the data they need to the AI tool. So instead, try to get something that can be approved in just a couple of days, again, so
Mhm.
that you're getting visibility and then you can start rating things in. All
Cool.
right. We are going to have a live Q&A here in just a minute.
So we got one that came in.
Okay.
It said, "We have Microsoft Copilot rolled out. Should I be worried about every department building their own agents in Copilot Studio?"
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, you should.
You should be. Yeah. And again, the users in your system probably aren't going to be doing this maliciously. They're not trying to do something wrong. But this is an amazing productivity tool that can make everyone's job a lot easier. So if you have some guidelines on how they can create those applications, if you're using sensitivity labeling to keep Copilot from accessing really
Yes.
sensitive data, then you put yourself in a much better position. And now the users have a fully sanctioned and configured tool that they can use to create these agents because they are useful. But they're not doing it in an uncontrolled and risky kind of way.
Right. And make sure you understand how to configure this. Is it rolled out? Is it not rolled out?
Yeah.
If you have any questions, feel free to write to us. We're both available on LinkedIn or info@lmpsecurity.com, and we can get you guys some more information.
Yeah.
We have another question. How do I even start an inventory? Whew,
Where do I look first?
I don't know about that
Man,
one.
that's a tough one. Yeah, I mean, I'd start with just basically talking to your user base and asking that in the context of what AI tools are you using to do your job. Again, don't ask if they're using unsanctioned or unauthorized tools because they'll probably just say no. But get a feel for what kind of tools they are actually using in the environment. And I mean, this can be, if not a perfect solution, a great start at least.
Yeah, and take a look at Microsoft Agent 365. I know a lot of organizations out there are on Microsoft systems, so
Mhm.
that's a quick and easy way to get some visibility.
Yeah, yeah, very quick, very simple.
Okay, our AI vendor says they're SOC 2 compliant. Is that enough?
No,
No,
probably not.
no.
No. No, it's good to have that. But when we look at, like, the Vercel case, Vercel was breached because they paired up with a third-party AI agent or a AI company who, on their back end, had been infected with a piece of information stealing malware.
Right.
So just the fact that they say they're SOC 2 compliant, there could be something else on the back end that would potentially lead to exposure of data.
Well, and also a lot of times the issue is on your end of things. Okay, maybe Anthropic is SOC 2 compliant. That doesn't change the fact that your employee got malware on their phone, which was able to leverage dispatch, which was able to exfiltrate
Yeah,
data.
yeah, there's
So a lot of that, the risk actually lies in how connected everything is.
true.
We're all connected.
Mhm.
One more question, and then
Yeah, last one we have on here. My CEO wants an AI strategy.
oh,
What's the one thing I need to put in front of them?
ooh, I think a list of what AI tools are actually in use and maybe what has been requested
Yeah,
as well. And then you can talk through like what is an acceptable level of risk in our environment, who should have access, who shouldn't, what AI tools should have
yeah,
access, what shouldn't. But I think as you step into this territory, which all of us are stepping into, the first thing you need to understand is what already exists in your environment and what do people want so
yeah.
that you can have that informed discussion.
I would agree.
All right. Good conversation today, you guys. Thanks for the questions. Again, this is Cyberside Chats. I am Sherry.
Matt?
This is Matt. Thanks so much for tuning in. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.